This is Growth Guide, a podcast exploring the depths of curiosity, questioning everything in the name of growth. I'm your host, Brian D'Alessandro. Today, the owner of Mindful Birth in NYC, Mary Esther Malloy, joins me along with my lovely wife, Navah D'Alessandro. You think you know how babies are made? You're in for a big surprise. Birth stories are a rite of passage that every person on this planet experiences, yet no two are the same. Now, it's no secret that our current systems have a gross misalignment with their business objectives and the sacred act of our fierce women bringing life into this world. Hearing Mary's insights and experiences in dealing with the system illuminates a systemic issue that needs all of our attention. Navah and I had a pretty extreme birth experience as our son was sitting breech and we weren't about to give up on a vaginal birth. Ultimately, Navah birthed our son vaginally breech without meds, like a boss. This is sadly a very rare occurrence in today's age, especially in the US, but as you'll soon see, it really shouldn't be the case. Even though we were planning for a home birth, Mary Esther's childbirth preparation course hands down gave us the knowledge and tools to navigate the hospital system and make empowered decisions every step of the way. Without the guidance of our core team of Mary Esther, our midwife Marcy Tardio, and our doula Maggie Torrance, I don't know what the experience would have looked like, but I know it would have been something we would not look back upon so fondly. I just want to take a moment to honor the sacred feminine in all of them and the divine work that they do along with all of the other practitioners out there. I'd also like to honor the incredible doctor that our angels brought us who birthed our son, for he's a rare breed of breech experienced, caring, and willing to take the risk in a day when hospitals and insurance companies strongly push against vaginal breech births despite their comparable risks to a cesarean. I sadly won't name him here out of concern for backlash, but know that he's out there and other angels are too. Mary Esther Malloy offers families an expansive, holistic approach to childbirth preparation, labor support, and parenting. In addition to teaching childbirth classes, running parenting groups, attending births, and raising her 3 children, Mary Esther publishes regularly about birth and parenting. Now, in the spirit of parenting, Navah and I recorded this without anyone watching or a little guy, and so, like parenting, it's a bit messier than normal, so please bear with less than perfect audio and the occasional Lego tower crashing in the background. Hello, Mary Esther and my lovely wife Navah. So honored to be here with you both as we talk about the sacred feminine and birthing and parenting. I feel very lucky to be with the two of you.
It is a pleasure to see you guys. Honestly, since we last saw each other pre-pandemic, it is really moving to see you. It brings up a lot. I really miss the gathering in the studio together, doing the preparation for birth together.
Yeah, it must be so challenging to be without that, and I know for parents who or new parents who are getting ready for birth, it was such an invaluable experience for us to be there with you and have your support, but also be amongst other soon to be parents and get that support because it's such a world of unknown. First, I want to say that women are absolutely the superior gender and stronger in all ways than we are for what they endure physically, through birthing, through their cycles, through the role of being a mother, and then of course everything that suffered from the patriarch. But that's a whole other topic. Although it does, I think, fit in as we get into the systemic challenges of birthing and the disempowerment. So I just wanted to start by saying that for sure. When we went into becoming parents, we knew that we knew nothing and didn't know what we were in for. But I think the one thing you can't prepare yourself for is just how life-changing it is on every single level. You truly do die and be reborn as your child does.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. And the work I do is both the labor preparation and then a lot of parenting support afterwards. And so I feel so honored to see families through that really cracked open change. And, I think what is so extraordinary about the experience of pregnancy and birth is the change, the moment to moment change of body, the change of, the psyche, the change of life circumstances. And researchers are now referring to this time specifically for women as matrescence, rhymes with adolescence. So it is such a time of physical, hormonal, body, life circumstance, social change. And it is a time of great changes in the brain as well. And I think we're only beginning to understand that and appreciate it. And it is an extraordinary passage through, and it can be quite challenging and it can be quite awakening as well. And I think that, it is through the challenge that we do experience the awakening. And, my experience with coming to work in the world of birth, I was kind of surprised. I ended up here and have been doing this work for about 15 years now. Growing up, I'm the oldest of five, and it always seemed to me like that female thing over in the corner in the world of feminism was like the world of like action and doing and kind of, the corporate climb. And then my experience of giving birth was just so like eye-opening and powerful and empowering. And I just felt like, wait a minute, how has birth and parenting been like shunted off to the side when it is so central to the experience of being human and needs to be reclaimed as something that can in fact be empowering and awakening through all the challenge and growth that happens through it.
And which counters the dialogue, the narrative that birth is this horrible thing, that women are broken, that they're cursing at their husbands. It's not this rite of passage, this beautiful moment of allowing and accepting and flowing. Instead, it's resistance and fighting and numbing.
Or something you just get through. It's like, it's this thing like, all right, you just got to get past that, then something starts. It's that destination mentality. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It robs women of this rite of passage that is the most powerful rite of passage for any human being to create life. That's what our human, construct is designed for. And the fact that that's being taken away, and where there used to be this community of support around women and there was this intergenerational exchange, it's now been sterilized,
segregated and put in a box.
And then also, look, I'm the professional, I know what to do, so you should listen to me, and you can make your own choice, but I'm gonna have to leave in 10 minutes, so if you don't decide now, then you're stuck and bad things could happen.
Oh, and it's you or your baby. Yeah, which we all learned from your class. You gave us a stark reality of the way things play out in a pretty formulaic step-by-step. Unfortunately, most of the time I'm talking to women after the fact, or I'm hearing their step and it's like, yep, check, 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 check. Would you be comfortable sharing that? The progression of a hospital birth at most of the time, especially in Manhattan?
Yeah, we, I know you had a really extraordinary experience of birth, and I would love to hear more about it. I also had very opening, profound, beautiful, powerful, and challenging experiences of birth. And what you guys are getting at are the like culture and the structural conditions around birthing. And there are so many conditions that shape women's experience going through, right? So there is, each person's personal history, their own relationship to pain, their own relationship to their bodies, their own relationship to perhaps traumatic experiences in the past, their relationship to institutions, to hierarchy, to the medical world. And I very much come at this with there are no enemies. Everybody really from their position is doing their best and wants the best and the safest for everyone. So it's not like an us against them, we're good, they're bad. There's so many things that influence. So as a doula, I have So I myself have 3 children, and 2 were born at birth centers and 1 was born at home. And I have supported over 600 families as a doula at this point, and many at home, many in birth centers. Now in Manhattan, birth centers have pretty much disappeared. That is a real lament of mine. And of course, many, 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 many in hospitals as well. And we have a system that, so many women just growing up in this culture are going to feel safest and best in a hospital. And that is well and good, right? That is our culture. That's the air we breathe, is you've got a problem, head to the hospital. The challenge is, of course, that, giving birth is not a problem. Giving birth is not a medical event most of the time. And of course, there are situations and conditions where the hospital is truly the safest and best place. But there are trade-offs, right? There are trade-offs. I never want to share scary stories, so I'm not going to go there. But I do feel it is very important as people are preparing to give birth that they really assess and look within and just open to a range of stories around birth that might help them determine where might be the best and really safest feeling place for them to give birth. So many people will just operate on the automatic pilot of head to the hospital, or my gynecologist referred me to this OB, boom, done. And then they may have feelings of like, yeah, I'd really like to do this on my own. I'd really love to feel this experience of birth. But then we often will have a kind of structural mismatch, because like the way the hospital is set up is really to support a more managed version of birth. And so if a woman is looking for something that is other than a managed experience of birth, she really has to think and take steps to, again, like structurally support it. If you have a fast blasting labor, you can do it anywhere, and no one's going to get in the way. However, many of us, especially with first babies, they do tend to be longer, and who knows, there are normal variations like the water breaking at the beginning, and that in a hospital setting can really shift from the get-go what is available to you, unless you really want to badass your way through and say no to everything. And my position is always, labor is hard enough. It's really hard to fight on top of the work itself.
And most people don't even know that you can fight or what to fight. I think that's another part of it, is that we've in our
And not fight, I
society.
think the word Mary Esther uses, advocate for yourself.
Right. Well, yeah, and to navigate that space, but that's the thing. Most of us don't know that that's an option. We've been pre-programmed to outsource our decision making to the medical professionals, and they mean well, but it
It's a
doesn't always
business.
align with our best interests. And we need to know. I mean, if you look back at Hippocrates and the birth of modern medicine, the whole concept was that you as an individual took responsibility for your health. You worked with a practitioner so that they could help you navigate it, but you needed to be connected. And we often treat it as a mechanic where you go in, it's like, all right, just fix it. Tell me when it's done. And I think that's a pretty broken thing, pretty broken system and mindset. And, your course really helped us to understand what the options were and how to navigate it. And the other part is, I think the amount of fear and stress and anxiety that is built up and compounds for most couples getting ready to give birth, I think also probably feeds into a longer birthing process. There's so much constriction around it, and it just has these negative effects, and also leads, of course, to giving your power away to get all of these different, medications that furthermore take you out of the experience.
Right. I always feel like as people are preparing for birth, if you feel like you are, so, I mean, just to be very fair, it is fine for women to just want to get through this to the other side. As you guys know, birth is but one among many significant points on the parenting path. Birth is not everything. When you are pregnant, it seems like the birth is everything, and you can put so much on it and develop a lot of fear. And I will just, as an aside, say, so, because I've been in this a while now, when I was first when I was having my first baby, when I was first teaching childbirth classes, the internet and birth were not what the internet is today. And folks were much more innocent in a sense and kind of free of some of the fears of what this information overload has done. What I have seen through the years of my teaching is a real shift from people showing up with this kind of like maybe innocent, maybe naive, but I certainly approached my first child's birth with this sense of like, I can do this. Like, just innocent, like, I can do this. I'm kind of excited. I want to feel this, and I'm just going to do it. And for me, I did switch from OBs to midwives. And again, structurally, that for sure 100% supported my capacity to do this. I had a doula. I was immersed in water, which is an amazing labor coping tool. And I was in an environment where it was just normal to do what I was doing, right? But what I'm seeing these days is so many families now are so trepidatious about even like dreaming, hoping, wishing, wanting, and really come to me and just say, like, well, I'm hoping for this with my experience, but I know so many things can happen. I'm hoping, but I know it's almost like everybody's like pre-tamping down because of there's so much information and there is a lot of trauma around the experience of birth. And we have to really honor that there's now this like feedback loop where people who are processing trauma and people who experience trauma need to process trauma. They need to be heard. And so they are telling their stories, and pregnant women who are eager for what is this passage, what does await me, are, you know, gobbling it up, and understandably. And there is this like compounding of, I will just say, fear around the experience. So we have both a very medicalized world around birth, uniquely so in our, you know, particularly unique among industrialized nations healthcare system. So we could really argue there's an over medicalization of birth, and then there's this feedback loop now where so many families are really afraid of the experience. And so I really have to say, I feel like part of my work is to, in ways that do not scare people and activate fear, kind of help people find a sense of confidence and belief in their capacity, and an assessment of the structural setup so that they are choosing wisely for themselves. Again, for some people, and I don't want to discount this, you know, birthing in the hospital really feels safest. And then that is the place where you are meant to be. You know, it's not about talking people into home birth. I've attended births of people who really felt unsafe in a home birth, and things were kind of wonky because of that. You know, one in particular, I remember we did finally transfer to the hospital, and I just saw this relief wash over her. And it just was clear to me, like, oh, she read these books that said home birth is the place to birth, but it actually wasn't for her. She actually would have felt safer in the hospital, and maybe in that setting, things would have flowed a bit more for her. So it really is an assessment of what's right for you. And for many, this hybrid of midwives in a birth center. Now, I know you guys went through a lot in terms of really discerning what was right for you and circumstances leading you to choose a hospital birth. And you guys did badass it in terms of lining up care and doing the work to really center and ground and prepare for the work ahead. Would you guys like to say a little bit about your experience, and maybe even framing it in terms of, you are on the other side now some years, framing it in terms of some of the growth that you feel you experienced through the decisions you made, the preparation you did, the work you did?
Yeah, and I'd love for you to take that, Nava. First, I just want to say, like, yeah, I mean, one thing this has taught me is birthing experiences are amazing, and these birth stories we all carry. A lot of us don't even know ours, and they're easy to lose. So I think it's so important to talk about them. And for every story, there's a different way it unfolds. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's not right or wrong in any capacity. It's what feels best for the couple, and that's the best thing for them. So I don't, you know, as we go into our story, I don't say that this is what I think everyone should do, but this is definitely ours.
Can I just one more thing? And
Please.
also just to acknowledge that for many families, that first experience of birth is such a time of growth where they do wake up to a lot of things around the birth industrial complex, if we may use such a term. And that is where they really learn and then make various choices accordingly. But anyway, Nava, yeah, I'd just be so curious to hear how these years later you're thinking about it and where the growth was for you guys.
So, I mean, it all really started, and this is not blowing rainbows and sunshine up your butt, from finding out that you existed. So, once I learned about Mary Esther Malloy's, I think it was the 8-week course, from my dear friend who had birthed at home, I was like, oh, there's some place where I can learn, and it's not online and it's not people's fears, it's just facts and a space being held beautifully. But that's how she portrayed it to me, and that's exactly how it unfolded. And when you gave us the template of how things play out, I looked at that as information of like, okay, these are things I can be prepared for. For instance, we were going to have a home birth, God's plans or God laughs, whatever. So we go to that class, and you just said, we're going to have many classes specifically focused on hospital births because the majority of the class are other parents who are going to be in the hospital. So we're going to talk about transitions from home to hospital as well. And you made it very softly but clear that we should pay attention.
Just in case, because things change. Yeah. You handled that very artfully.
We're both fire, Leo, Aries, so it's like, we're going to do. But you showed us that, like, we might not do exactly, so let's be open. And that was priceless because you gave us tools like, if you're going to transfer from your home birth to the hospital, bring sunglasses. Like, keep your energy, like, just silly little things that, like, changed our experience from could be traumatic and could be like, oh no, our plan went out the window, to like, we've got this. These are our tools. We know what to do. We can politely decline, or what all the different assets you gave us. But to answer the bigger question, how that changed, I mean, it changed me in every single way. It was a rite of passage. And it wasn't just the birth itself, to your point. It was the idea of birthing, going through the birth and coming out the other side, and then realizing that that was nothing, because there's a whole life after that. And your class was great, but it's not about the whole life. It was about breastfeeding, which was the next. Well, we're still going at 3.5, but I mean, it was an important part. We were tongue tied. I think we contacted you about that too. I mean, you were an asset to us the whole way through.
And I think for me, I don't want to speak for you, but the first year of being a father, sorry, that's for a
Lego tower,
very big Lego tower that just came tumbling down. You'll rebuild, my love. But the first year for me was survival. It was our first child. There's so much unknown. You're dealing with this life that depends on you, and you don't really know which are the serious things versus which are like, okay, it'll be all right. That was a real driving force for that first year. I remember once that first birthday came, I like had a sigh of relief, like, okay, we made it. He made it. Now he's much more durable and resilient. But let's give some context to what how ours unfolded, because I think for the listeners it's important to get that.
Yes. And then the other part is, I still talk to mothers, obviously, all the time. And I have started to, or even as of last week, a mother confided in me that she wanted to have a home birth. And I told her about your class, and she was like, there's a big class divide when it comes to birthing. Like, she wanted to be empowered. She's an herbalist. She's super knowledgeable and empowered and taking care of herself. But like, knowing that there's options of navigating the insurance system, getting education outside of insurance, people just go the direct line because they have enough to balance.
Yeah,
luckily, I'm just tenacious and was like, oh, I'm going to ask every single person 10 years leading up to birth about what birth was like, about what parenting was like. And that's how I got to you. But not everyone has the time or space or energy to do that. So that is something that I wish we could have more education that's open to more people instead of the fear that's at everyone's fingertips. and that fear also permeated the first year, because nursing through the night, Instagram was my best friend at 4 a.m. And that's where you get all the scary stories. And that's where I learned that breech birth was so common, and how lucky we were to have the experience we did, and how I have full chills. That is a fleeting, it was already gone by the time we were in our position. And I already have 3 friends that had to have cesareans because of it. And a few
So
of
step
them
back and give
context. Why don't you do
yeah.
that?
So
I'm not good at
we
the
were
context.
how far along in pregnancy
36
did we find?
weeks.
36 weeks. We found out that Nava was carrying breech, and breech is when the child is sitting upside down, front or right side up, really. So yeah, butt facing down.
How was Cora?
We were frank.
Oh yeah, that's right, Frank.
So that means his butt was pointed down, his legs were up, and
He was a sandwich.
and so we started finding some like natural ways of trying to help coax the child to turn, and we were doing inversions. Nava had yoga
I was
poses.
upside down for 2 weeks.
What was it? Tumbling Babies was another site that I think Mary Esther you gave
Spinning
us. Spinning
babies.
Babies. Okay, Spinning
Yeah.
Babies. Then there was also Turning Babies, where physically there was a manipulation to turn. We tried acupuncture or moxibustion. I was doing moxibustion on her like twice a day on the pinky toe, build heat in there. We tried music, ice packs, like all these things. Meditation, visualization, and then we're
talking about you.
we got to the point of turning the baby and physically having it turned, and we went in for the assessment, and they said, okay, come back, and if he hasn't moved by then, or if it hadn't moved by then, because we didn't know you were a boy, although we were feeling that. But anyways, we went back in, and once they started to go to do it, it just felt weird for us. He was like, yeah, I don't think it's going to move. And like, we were watching videos where they really physically get in there. And so we said, okay,
it's called manipulation.
Yeah, physical manipulation. So we just said, let's stop this. We went home, and for the first time we asked ourselves, like, we've been so focused on what we think the right way for you, Koro, to come in the world was, and we never asked you. And so we said, you know what? Let's ask Koro what he wants. And so we asked you. We used this astrology deck, right? And we assigned some different meanings. And the version that came back was, you said, it's my karmic duty to come into the world this way and to do it now. And as soon as we heard that, we just said, okay. And the odds for getting a clear communication in this were like very, very small to nil. And so it was loud and clear. We let go and we said, all right, let's just let it unfold. Nava literally went into labor that night. And
well, it was back pain. I was just tossing and turning all night.
Nava was like, no, it's not labor. She woke up. Well, we found out that she had gone through. So everything you told us, don't like, it's not like the movies usually where you're rushing around. You'll have like 7 hours, get her fed. So I get there and I'm like, all right, let's get you some food. We'll take a nice long walk. And all of a sudden, the midwife, Marcy, was there. And it was like out of the movie, throwing everything into the luggage. She's like, we're 7 centimeters dilated. We gotta go.
Because he made me eat oatmeal. I'm like, I'm not doing it. We left the house and vomited in this thing.
And so he was ready to enter that way. But so when we found out about carrying breech, we started researching real quickly. We learned, okay, the likelihood of a home birth without him turning is not high. And so once our midwife eventually said, okay, we're going to have to look at some options between her, our doula, and your help, we really started reaching out and finding support. And we had angels that were looking out, because we just had things pop up, including all of you.
Marcy was at a midwife
convention, yeah. And one of these midwives who works at another hospital, and I think let's not name the hospital, let's not name our doctor, because he really went to bat for us and put his butt on the line, and we'll talk about this. But I don't want to have anything, come back on him, because he's, a hero. And it's a sad reality that we have to avoid this and not celebrate this.
And it's just because of a lack of education, right? At the end of the day, somebody did a really poor study saying that, that breech births were a separate category. They were no longer births. They were a surgery, basically. That's what the equation turned into. And So hospitals just say breech, okay, straight to cesarean. And this wonderful person was like, if you can schedule a cesarean because you don't want to birth vaginally, then you can have a breech birth. It's your choice.
Yeah, he's like, I won't deny that right.
And I will just jump in and say ACOG, so, a synthesis of the data, and the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists says quite clearly that the data shows that, yes, there is increased risk with the vaginal breech, but it is on a parallel line with the increased risk that it is to birth by cesarean. And so what they say is that in the hands of a skilled provider, we are at the same level of risk. The challenge, of course, as you guys well know, is that we have very few skilled providers now. And that is also structural in terms of the education system, the lack of support through the insurance, through the hospitals, tiers of challenge to create a new generation of providers who know how to deliver babies breech.
And I think probably a lack of interest or demand from women because they're told that it's a dangerous thing.
Becomes a loop, yes.
Yeah.
But many women really do want the vaginal, at least the opportunity for a vaginal birth with breech.
Well, and that's why, look, I hope out of this conversation and us sharing it shows folks that there is a way and to not give up because the practitioners that exist that know how to do this are shrinking. And so unless they're performing these births and having their, younger doctors learning this, it's not going to work. And, we need to show that the safety is there. We need to show that there is a demand. So the hospitals and the health insurance companies somehow come back around, or an alternative, means for delivering in this way crops up. So don't give up.
And then the other part is supposedly the story goes that breech births are births of healers. So birthing is an imprint, right? And so to change that imprint, we're losing an entire population. I have full chills again of healer. As the story goes, of healers. So if we're going to rob these babies of having their birth experience, which was his karmic duty to do now.
I think you speak to as would be healers, look, we've also lost touch with the mystical and spiritual aspect of birthing in a large degree. And I think that's another part that's important to take back. But coming back to, where we were. So Marcy, was at a convention, speaks to a midwife who works at a hospital who's like, hey, I might know a guy. And this is after we had called everyone under the sun. Spoke to...
And you called everyone under the sun.
And the options on the table to us were someone who's going to charge $40,000 and they were not at all guaranteeing they would go forward with it and we'd still have to spend that. No insurance. There was the farm, which, where is that located?
Tennessee with Ina May Gasket, yeah.
Yeah, we were considering that. And so all of these things. And then all of a sudden, this avenue opened up and we found this doctor. And we went in and he was, strong, confident, calm. He was very careful to make sure that we met his requirements for delivering breech. And he gave us the information. He knew our background. He knew what our original plan was. If he didn't understand something about one of our beliefs or, mindsets, he would ask us because he wanted to learn. And so there was this openness that, is sometimes hard to find as well. So he said, okay, you meet the qualifications. And we then had to navigate the hospital system because it was still in the system. And that became the next stage. Thanks to how much you equipped us, it was, all right, how do we make sure that, first of all, this environment is less intrusive and sterile? So, we went there with Himalayan salt lamps, covered all of the room with colorful scarves. We had our own playlist made and we didn't allow those fluorescent lights to be turned on anytime. And the doctors were very, very challenged by this. And, one of the things was clear is through this Newtonian separatist lens in our medical system, everyone is trained to do one specific thing and they look for that problem to solve, and nothing against them. It's just the design. And so there's a lot of the hammer looking for everything to be the nail. And so, having the understanding of that and understanding of our rights to defer or decline was huge.
I politely declined.
Yes, I understand completely. I politely decline.
Which we had to politely decline because all the interns wanted to be there. It was like we were in a round table surgery room. It was the most exciting thing.
And that was a tough one.
Which was very funny. And then I was naked wearing
sunglasses. Yeah, Navah was stripped down, butt naked, just wearing these like sparkling sunglasses. And like the doctor walks in, he's like, "Get this woman some clothes." We're like, no, we're cool. Clothes don't make sense now. But it was just one of like, and you said very clearly, like, there's a point, like, and you said this like definitively. There's a point in the birthing process where you can do what you want, but where clothes don't make sense. And absolutely. And like for me too, it was just like, it was that funny? Yeah, so that was.
Coro did not have clothes on either.
He did not.
He didn't have clothes on either.
And then there was the aspect of Navah wanted to do a birth, and I completely supported, without any medication. And just being able to understand how to navigate the system for that as well. Like we did our research and we learned that, well, if you get there, far enough along in the process and you're dilated to a certain point, they might not have time to give you the
spinal.
Yeah. What is it called?
Epidural. Yeah.
The epidural. Thank you. That was the word. And so, we so strick it from our vocabulary. So we got there far enough along, and there wasn't time for it. And that was
that was in God's hands,
another
and Coro's hands. I mean, we got there, and things unfolded how they
But
unfolded.
no, we discussed it about getting there.
Well,
later,
we manifested it in our discussion.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was coming. He had business.
I love that you guys didn't have time for the epidural, but you had time for the Himalayan salt lamp and the scarves all over the room. I was like, okay.
Selective focus, right?
Yeah, focus on what you want, not what you don't want.
Yeah, we were told that like only one of us, either myself or the midwife, was going to be allowed in the operating room because it was vaginal breach. It needed to take place in the operating room. So we were like, okay, let's just give us another set of clothes so that we can at least both be suited up. And like little by little, we just, there were three of us and the doula. And they were saying only one of us. And
everybody was in.
Little by little, we all got dressed and then like kind of just wormed our way in, and it ended up, working out. We were all in there. But I think that was another thing. Like, things are told to you as fact. You don't need to necessarily fight them, but you don't need to accept them. And there a lot of times is another way, as long as you look for it.
And do it with love and respect.
Yeah, and so then Coro was born fully breached, no medication. Navah was an absolute warrior. I mean, carried it with such grace. And Coro was literally very avant-garde. He was born penis first. His penis was between his legs, and it was just remarkable. And you came out.
He wants everyone by the time he's 18 to know that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's the truth.
Yeah, that's how you came in. So, and it changed us.
How did I get our way in you?
Oh, that's another
That's a whole other episode. We'll do another episode on that.
So, yeah, and that was just the beginning. And then it was like, how many shots do they want to give him in the hospital, and the eye gel, and
then because he was breached, they wanted to take him and start doing x-rays on his hips for this or that and do all these tests, and like it would have been so easy. And also you're exhausted at that point to just like let go and say, okay, fine. But we learned just how much of that was either unnecessary, it was being rushed and could certainly wait without having any ill effects. And other ones,
cord clamping, which we learned about, but we didn't get to.
Yeah, we didn't have the option because.
But also skin to skin time, the importance of having that first hour and making sure that he makes his way to the breast, and all that priceless information that would have been robbed if they took him to do all their testing to make sure he was fine. But you know what? We did the natural way, and he's fine.
It's easy to discredit and kind of shoo away like the doulas and midwives as not being doctors. I think it's easy to just say, oh, but they're not this. And our experience with him being tongue-tied, we had multiple doctors who said, no, he's fine. There's not an issue. Pediatricians. And both our midwife and doula we're like, yeah, that's what it is.
He has a heart-shaped tongue.
And
It's
if
tongue
one,
tie.
and he's like, and once you get it clipped, like, you know, he's gonna be eating and gaining weight, latching on like immediately. And surely enough, that's exactly what happened. And he had been losing, you know, weight. We didn't even realize until we looked back on it. But that, you know, was a saving grace. So there's a lot of knowledge and experience held by the full range of these medical professionals, and I think it's important to tap into as many as we can.
Yeah, it's a pretty extraordinary tale through. There are many families who really, really wish they could do what you guys did, and many of them, again, kind of wake up after the fact. Many families I've worked with are, in a sense, shocked by what a cesarean entails in the recovery. And I am always saying there are no second class births. Birth is birth. A child is being born, a family is being born. We're not discounting, it's not lesser than, but sometimes there are elements that are just shocking to the system, the body, the spirit. Um, and it is, I think it's so amazing to hear stories like yours, because you guys had this sense before Coro's birth to really work and to, check out all your options. And as you said, there was a path that somehow appeared before you, all your work, and this path appeared. As we were saying before, that path is continually narrowing and narrowing for other families who would be in the same situation. It's not gone, but it is not as available. And part of what can bring about change is consumer advocacy. I mean, there are many things, but I think even families just being awakened to the possibility and inquiring and investigating and exploring. I want to honor the hard work you guys did, because I watched you go through it. I saw you were tireless, and you had the good fortune, the alignment to meet the doctor you met, and for him to be in a moment in time where he was able to do what he was able to do for you. As we have discussed, it is, even for this doctor now, he is under increasing pressure, and it is harder for him to do for other people what he did for you.
Yeah, and such a shame.
Yeah, there are many levels here, right?
The other part of that also is, you know, let's look at the underserved and underprivileged, right? The socioeconomic divide has a huge impact, and because there's a lot of people out there that don't have access to the information, they don't have access to the funding, the support, or any of this that can make it possible. So I think change needs to happen across the board as well. But I want to throw it back to you.
Oh, I mean, and interestingly, I don't need to tell you guys, but you guys switched to a public hospital in New York City, and where a doctor actually had some more latitude than in our private hospitals. You had a conversation with the doctor in a private hospital who was charging $45,000 to do a vaginal breach. She is no longer doing that.
Not charging for you, but not doing them at all, right?
Not doing them at all now. But of course, who can afford that? I mean, that's pretty extraordinary, right? So yes, it's a huge question. And it is also interesting. I mean, in New York City, our midwives are in our public hospitals. So that is an interesting fact, that some women birthing in public hospitals on Medicaid are, getting more access to midwifery care anyway than is available in the private hospitals. Just an interesting fact.
And we had a lovely experience in the hospital, you know, given
But
it
it was
was a
a
hospital.
mother-child hospital too.
Yes, it was a baby-friendly hospital in New York City. Only one of our private hospitals has certified, and almost all our public hospitals have. Again, I think what this points to is our for-profit medical system, and how that really has to be challenged around birth. Cesareans are big money makers. Sadly, we're not incentivized to lower the costs around birth. Why is it so hard for families planning home births or birth center births with midwives that cost a fraction of what a birth in a hospital costs? Why is it that it is so hard to get coverage for those births? And it just doesn't make any sense. So there's so much that has to shift, but one story at a time, one baby at a time, one family at a time. But the work you're doing of sharing your story is impactful and is part of it. And it's what I've been, soldiering away in the trenches for 15 years now.
And on the front line, yeah, like
Trying
I
to
said,
And thank you for
support
that.
families through this. Yeah.
I mean, you changed our lives, and every time we tell the story, you're changing other people's lives. You're giving them options and empowering these women and these families to wake up to their pure potentiality and their rites of passage that is coming, whether they believe it or not.
Maybe I will just say for families who might be listening, there's so many, again, causes and conditions that shape the experience of birth. I think there is great value in going within and identifying what matters to you, and then looking for support, whether it's preparation, whether it's, the team you're assembling, the setting you're choosing, and just to be thoughtful that you are lining up care that really, in a core way, feels right for you. Again, given the constraints of our medical system, given the inequality that is rampant in our healthcare system, et cetera, but just doing what we can to, create a setting that feels right. And again, supportive people make a big difference as you're going through this. So if you're feeling alone, reach out, build community.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Mary Esther Malloy and Navah D'Alessandro and Coro.
Thanks for joining us this week on Growth Guide. A big thanks to our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by Project New You. I'm a huge fan of their Nitrovite nootropic brain supplement. It's helped me to develop laser focus, a better memory recall, and motivation. Nitrovite has helped me in launching this podcast amongst completing many other projects. Visit growthguide.love/focus to learn more and use promo code GROWTH for 15% off. This episode is also sponsored by the upcoming film Thrive 2. This is What It Takes, a follow-up to the 2011 hit Thrive, which is one of the most widely viewed documentaries in history with over 90 million views. If creating a better world matters to you, don't miss it. Visit growthguide.love/thrive. Make sure to visit our website, growthguide.love, where you can find freebies, exclusive content, and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you found value in listening, I'd really appreciate a rating on iTunes. I can't tell you just how important this is. Or spread the love. Tell your friends, your fam, heck, tell your spirit animals. And follow me on Instagram at growthguide.love. Be sure to tune in next week for our newest episode.